Now let's go over how to translate the aorist participles. How do we translate the aorist participles? Well, by way of review, if you remember, for the present participles, the emphasis of the present participles, when you translate it adverbially, is simultaneous action or simultaneous time. So we often translated the present participle as while. You use the conjunction while to show that whatever action is taking place in the participle happens at the same or simultaneous time as the action of the main verb. But the aorist participles, the emphasis is not on simultaneous time. For the aorist participles, the emphasis is on sequential time. In other words, the aorist participles are used to show that something happens first, followed by something else. So it's sequential. So usually the action, the aorist participle, happens first. So that the first action is the aorist participle, and then following the action of the aorist participle is the main verb of the sentence. So aorist participles are translated showing undefined action. So usually it's not an ing form. It's just a simple verb action that's translated without the ing. The ing translation is reserved for the present continuous participle. Aorist participles have undefined action, and the action of the participle happens before the action of the main verb. So first, the action of the participle, then the action of the main verb. So let me again give almost the exact same sentence for the examples 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with some changes. And what we'll do, we'll use the aorist participle form prosuxamenos, which is the aorist participle for praying or prayed. We're going to translate this in an undefined way. And we're going to use the conjunction after. So we're going to use after to talk about sequential time. Now, even though your chart has a simple translation after praying, I don't want you to translate it after praying. There's several problems with this translation. One, it uses the ing, and you want to try to define a pair of the participle in an undefined way. If all you saw was proxusamenos and without in isolation, not modifying anything else, you might translate it as after praying. But because we're using it in a sentence, remember, the goal of every participle is to translate it as a clause. You want to translate it as a clause. So I very much want you to translate it in this way. So if this is, so watch what's happening here. The main verb, I know the truth, ginosko tein aletheon. That's the action of the main verb. When I translate prosuxamenos, I have to show that praying happens before I know the truth. And so the way I translate this is after I prayed, so I did the praying first, after I prayed, I know the truth, or I know the truth after I prayed. So when we talk about sequential translations or sequential translations for the participles, again, the action of the participle happens first and then the action of the main verb. So the tenses will try to reflect that. Your English translations in terms of the time of the action will try to reflect that. So if the main sentence is I will know the truth, then to show that praying happened before I know the truth, I can translate this as after I pray. So after I pray, this is a present time translation, then later in the future I will know the truth. So let's look at these examples. I knew or was knowing the truth, the imperfect, after I had prayed, to show something that is antecedent to knowing the truth, antecedent time. You would use the word had prayed. I knew the truth after I had prayed. In the perfect tense, I have known the truth after I had prayed. And so in each case, what we try to do is we try to have the participle action happen first, then the action of the main verb, and we're using the conjunction after as a way to translate the participle. We're using after as a conjunction. We're translating it as a clause. There is something called the future participle, which is really the present participle, and what you do is you add a sigma between the present stem and the ontos. But rather than introducing a new paradigm, as Mounce has noted, the future participle is so rare. It only occurs 12 times in the entire New Testament, and a lot of times the word that uses the future participle the most is the word sozo, or the word I am saving. And so in Matthew 27:49 is a good example of this. The word sozon is an example of one of the 12 future participles that use it throughout the entire Testament. Notice that this sigma here is the future tense formative. So this is the future tense formative. So if the present participle is sozon, then the future uses the sigma tense formative added to the stem, and this indicates a future participle. I'll let you look at Matthew 27:49, which is translated for you as an example. But again, this is just simply a footnote in your textbook. When we think of participles, the primary forms of participles is the present, the aorist, and next week we will learn the perfect forms. Right? So far we've learned the present participle, we learned the aorist participle. Yes, there's a future, but you're not required to learn it. But just so you know, all it does is insert a sigma between the stem and the tense formatives, and then you get the future form. But it's so rare, and it occurs mostly with the word sozo, I am saving, that Mounce doesn't require you to memorize the paradigm, and neither will I. I want to go over briefly how the 6 principal parts helps you form the participle forms for the irregular verbs. It's actually a very simple formula. Since the regular forms for the verbs are something you memorize as part of your vocabulary. So when you learn the vocabulary word lambano, I'm assuming that you know the future active form for the first person singular is lemsosai. It uses a second aorist for its aorist active form elabon. The perfect form is alepha. Its perfect middle passive form is alemai, and its aorist passive form is alemphane. This is something you memorized, and this is all midterm 1 material right here. And so, how do I form right now all you've learned so far is the present participles and the aorist participles, and you will learn, but you're not required to learn yet, the perfect participle. So you'll learn this later. And you know the aorist passive participles. So you know these 3 columns here. And you want to ask, well, how do I know how to form the participle for it? Well, you take the principal part, make sure that for all aorist participles, you don't augment it because it's a non-negative mood. And then you simply follow the rules for the aorist participle using that stem. So if I want to use the form for the present participle, and I'm just going to show you the genitive form because that's where the main stem is. It's lam, bon, non, tos. That's because I take lambano, that's the stem. So here's lambon. I add ontos to it, and that gives me lambontos. if I want to do the aorist participle, I know that alabon is the indicative form, so drop the augment, use lob, and because this is second aorist, I have to use the second aorist form. So labontos is the genitive singular for alabon, and then for the aorist passive, drop the augment, so I have length. Instead of thane, which is the indicative form, I'm going to use the participle form. So lemphentos is the participle. So do you see what I did? Because I know the principal parts of the irregular verb, I de-augment, I take the stem, I apply the rules for the participle, and I get the form. If it's an aorist participle, I de-augment it. I make sure that the augment's not there because the participle doesn't use the augment. And I use the stem, I follow the rules for the participle, and that gives me the form. So you go ahead and practice. I want you to give me the nominative singular and genitive singular forms for apocrinomai, all right, for the present, the aorist active and aorist passive forms. Here's some more practice with blepo and the stop verbs, caruso. Here's patho. Here's an example of a contract verb. And you go ahead and remember that you only learned the present participle, the aorist active participle, and the aorist passive participle. You have not learned the perfect, you know the perfect indicative, but you don't know the perfect participle form yet. So fill in the present active participle forms, the aorist active participle forms, and aorist passive participle forms using the principal parts as a way to figure out what the stem is for each tense. And do the same for your example from the liquid verbs and from the double roots.